Right, morning boys and girls. This morning we're going to rebuild the rocker shaft. Now I just wanted to show you, if you remember in an earlier video, I showed you how I pressed the bushes out of the rocker arms. Now I pressed all the bushes out, but unfortunately I was unable to press the bushes in with the equipment I had. I would have damaged the bushes and it would have just taken forever, and probably I was unable to then ream them out. So the guy who did my cylinder head, I shipped the whole thing off to him, dropped it all off together, and he's whatever he's blasted the rocker arms with, he's given them a good clean. But more importantly, he's pushed in new bushes, and each bush has been matched up to the rocker shaft. But more importantly, if you remember, I was telling you that I had a problem with what I was going to do with the end, the oil drilling that goes through here and into the bush, and again here going into the bush. Well, that problem was solved because he did that, and although we didn't manage to put a grub screw in because the metal was too hard, what he did was he TIG welded. He drilled the hole for the bushings, for the oil ways, and then he plugged those with some sort of a bronze weld. So that's every one of those is all done, and they're all spotlessly clean. He's refaced the front of the things, and I think all in total, I think it was no more than £100, but I will get a price for that later on if anybody's interested. So we've got 12 rocker shafts, and what he did, in case you don't rebuild your engine straight away, he sprays them with something to stop them going rusty, and then he seals them up in these vacuum bags. So everything that came back from him, including the cylinder head, was all sealed up in one of these bags. So even if you was building your engine over a period of time, then you wouldn't have any problem about things going rusty. So yeah, so what I'm going to do now is pause the video. I'm just going to get everything ready. We've got a new rocker shaft. We're going to refer to the manual because there's a set way of building this. Regarding one of the pedestals, it's got to be in the right location, facing the right way. So I'll pause the video. I'll make sure we've got all our parts, and I'll lay them all out before I start, and then we'll carry on from there. Right, I've got all my parts laid out now, with the exception of the with the tappet adjusters, which I'll come back to those later in the video. So we've got our rocker arms all laid out. We've also got our washers that go either side of the pedestals. Now there's 12 of those, but you've got to remember, guys, there's also 2 thicker washers. I don't know if you can see that. There's also 2 thicker washers. Now they go at the end of the rocker shaft, one at each end of the rocker shaft. So keep those separate from your thin washers. There's also 2 spring washers, again one at each end of the rocker shaft. So you must remember to put those in as well. And obviously, secure it all, there's a split pin. Now you'll have to excuse me using these old split pins because I forgot to buy some split pins, but I will, after I've reassembled this, I will take these pins out and replace them with some new pins. And these old ones, somebody might want to save a penny, but yeah, you might as well just buy new ones. So and the springs, you'll see the springs at that end. So right, I'll pause the video and then we'll get ready. Oh no, just one other thing. The pedestal that I was referring to, this one is very important, and it goes in a specific location. It's the number 4 pedestal, and it's tapped inside. Now what this is the banjo bolt what supplies the oil feed to the rocker shaft. Now this has got to go on number 4 pedestal, and this is the first one you put on because you've got to lock it into a location in the rocker shaft, which I believe is this hole here. So that shaft, that pedestal has got to be into this position first before you do any further, because that locks the rocker shaft onto the pedestal, and then that stops it from turning like so. Because remember guys, it's the rocker arm that rocks on the shaft. It's not the shaft that moves, it's the rocker arm that moves. So I'll pause the video and then I'll come back to you and I'll show you how we're going to go about reassembling it. Right guys, this is the banjo bolt that I was mentioned earlier on. This bolt, along with two washers, a washer each side of it, fits through the oil feed pipe that fits to so that there'll be a washer on there and a washer at the top, and it fits into the banjo bolt. Now for Vince, you can see Vince, I've faced that up so it's nice and flush, and the copper washers, again Vince, I've cleaned both the copper washers up, so I'm quite happy to use those again. So I'll pause the video again and I'll get back to you with the next section. Right guys, now there is another important part that you need to be mindful of when you're reassembling this rocker shaft. One end of this shaft has got a driven in plug. In other words, it's been hammered in and it doesn't remove. The other end of the rocker shaft has got a threaded plug. So this end, the threaded end, you must make sure it's pointing to the front of the engine. So we've got it in the right orientation. We know that this plug is where our pedestal is going to, our number 4 pedestal, which we have to install first. That's to make sure everything else is locked in. So following the instructions in the manual, I'm going to just start and assemble number 4 pedestal. Now it does say that you have to have the deepest part of the pedestal on the right hand side of the engine, and by the right hand side of the engine, when you're sitting in the driver's seat in the manual, the right hand side is your right hand side, sitting in the driver's seat, not looking at it from the front under the bonnet. So bear that in mind. When they refer to left and right, it's when they're sitting in the car in this particular manual. So I'm just going to put some oil on this shaft, simply because I don't need to worry about the assembly lube here. I don't need to worry about the assembly lube on here, because it's not the shaft that turns, it's the rocker arms. So all I'm putting oil on here is just to make sure that the pedestal will slide down a bit easier, slide down the shaft. Because the chap who did my rocker arms, he only reamed in the rocker arms. He didn't do any work on the pedestals. So slide your pedestal along like so until you get it into position, and you can see there then, that hole there is lined up. If I turn it a little bit more, look, you can see it lining up. So line your pedestal up with the hole with the drilled hole in the rocker arm, in the rocker shaft. What we've got to do then, we've got to get our oil feed pipe. We need a washer, so we'll put our washer on first onto the pedestal. Then we'll put our oil feed pipe, and just look at the manual to see which way it goes. Then we'll put our oil feed pipe. We'll put our second washer on the banjo bolt, and then we'll put our banjo bolt onto the pedestal. Now if you remember guys, I never tighten anything down with a spanner. All I do, I tighten them finger tight. Now it doesn't say tighten everything up at this stage, so I'm quite happy to leave that loose, just tight enough so it's not going to fall out. And I know that rocker shaft now is locked, that pedestal has locked that rocker onto there, because it's gone straight through into the drilling, which in turn will feed the oil up. So that's where we are so far. And the next point then, the next stage then, is just to reassemble all these pedestals. They're interchangeable. All your rocker arms are interchangeable. All your little thin washers are interchangeable. So you can reassemble. You can start reassembling. You can start reassembling in any order you wish. So I'll just pause the video and get some things ready for you, and then we'll carry on. Right guys, so we've got our assembly lube ready, and this is what I use. As you know, I used to use Joe Gibbs, but I think Joe Gibbs is actually better than this. So this is for me Australian friends. That's the lube that I'm using. So yeah, first of all then guys, following the manual, there's a good description in the manual. We'll put one of the little spacer washers on. We then put some assembly lube on our rocker arm, on the shaft, because our rocker arm's going to be going on there. And by the time I pick this up, that lube will have worked its way around that shaft. And then we slide our rocker arm onto the shaft. Now these have all been reamed, but as I say, he's reamed these in for me, and that's in position on the shaft. Then we need another spacer. And then we need a spring. Then we need another spacer. Then we need another rocker. Arm. Again, we put our assembly lube on. Might not be in the right place, but if we put some on there and we put some into the rocker arm as well. This stuff will work its way around. Make sure you've got them all facing the right way, guys. There's a good description in the manual, so if you slide those on like so, then we want another spacer. Then we want another pedestal. Now remember guys, these pedestals are interchangeable. Just make sure you've got them all facing the right orientation. You don't want one opposite the way on. So make sure you've got them all in the right location. And again, like so. So we've got the first one in. Again, then we move on onto another spacer. I'll put a bit more. I'll just put a bit more oil on just because they're a little bit tight to slide on. Then we want another rocker arm. Don't forget your lubrication, your assembly lube. Obviously when we start the engine, we're going to need to make sure that we've got some oil up to this rocker shaft before we fire it up, so we need to spin it up with no plugs in. So then we've got the spacer, we've got the rocker arm, then we have another spacer, and then we have another spring, then we have another spacer. Just get the order right, lads. Then we've got another rocker arm. Now what I'm going to do, lads, I'm going to assemble this up till we get to the end where we're going to have to put the where we're going to be putting the spring and the pin and the clip in. So I won't show you any more of this boring bit. We'll just work our way along the rocker shaft. until we've got all the pedestals in situ. So I'll just pause the video again. Right, guys, I did actually make a small mistake on this rocker shaft. When I was first assembling it, I put a spacer washer in between every part of the pedestal and every rocker arm. Now, obviously I didn't realise, but there certainly wasn't enough to do that. And when I counted them all up and I next had a look, it doesn't quite explain it correctly in the manual. But what it is, you don't put a spacer washer in between the spring and the pedestal. There's exactly enough spaces to go between the pedestal and the rocker arms. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So there was 12 spacer washers. I took them out and that's what there was. There is no spacer washer in between the part of the rocker arm and the spring. And the thick washer that I pointed out to you earlier on actually sits between the spring washer at the end and the thick washer and the pin. So we've got the pins in. Now what I did, because I was a bit concerned about how it would prime up when I started, once I'd got these things more or less in situ and all the holes for the rockers were all covered over with the arms, I actually undid this banjo bolt again and I filled the shaft with oil. I squirted engine oil inside through here. So I know that the rocker shaft is actually full of oil. It certainly will give it a little bit of a start. You know, even if some of it drains out while it's standing before the rebuild, even if some of it drains out, there's going to be enough oil in there, I think, to lubricate. What with the assembly lube that I've put on there as well. So everything's more or less where it should be on there now. The only thing that you'd have to do is once it's located back on the cylinder head, you might have to just jiggle these around a little bit to over the valves. But yeah, that's where we are at the moment. I'm waiting for 2 rocker adjusters to come, 2 valve adjusters to come for the ends of the rocker arms. Yeah, when all these have bedded in a little bit, I'll give them a jiggle about a bit. Again, it's an uneventful video really. But it's just showing you where we are, how we're doing and what we're going to be doing. I'm going away now for a few days, so my next video probably won't be until next weekend. So I hope you're still enjoying these videos, and like I say, you've seen them as I do them. They might be a little bit amateurish, but that's what we have, so we make do with what we've got. So thanks for watching.